Awesome. Well, happy Thursday in August. I hope everybody's having a great day. We're super excited to have you here to talk about such a timely and relevant topic that I know everyone is talking about, the technician shortage. But I'm honored to bring you Marie Voth today to have an open discussion about what we're actually going to do about that. We can all sit here and talk about it. It's been an issue that's been ongoing in our industry for 15 plus years, which is crazy to think that, it's such a heavy issue right now, but it's been an issue for so long. But before I introduce Murray and we get into it, I'm just going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. A lot of you guys are with us every month, so you know the drill. But for those that are joining us, we really appreciate you spending your time. I know your shops are super busy, but it's great to see that you guys are showing up for yourselves and your business and in your employees to grow your businesses. So again, this is being recorded. We will share the slides and recording with you afterwards, most likely tomorrow. Once the session ends, there will be a survey that pops up. Again, I run these monthly, sometimes twice a month. And your feedback is super important to us so that we continue to put the people in front of you that you want to hear from. And not only that, hear the topics that you need to hear about and how to grow from those topics and manage your businesses. So all of that to say, thank you. We would love your participation on this webinar. I know you guys are not on the cameras, your voice are muted, but there is a chat function and there is a Q&A. So at any point, this is as much as your discussion and it is Murray's and I's. So please feel free to just send your thoughts, whatever comes through your mind, and allow us to help kind of gauge those conversations and share that with you. So really quick, a little bit about Murray. I'm going to do that. Sorry, Murray.
Okay.
He is the president of RPM Training, which I also want to announce he just celebrated his 4th anniversary. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I know
Thank you.
everything that you do is really appreciated. Murray has a lot of time in the industry, about 20 years owning and operating service stations with repair bays. So he's taken a lot of training and was part of a 20 group process for 13 years. And again, he was the head trainer from 2016 to 18 for a large Canadian automotive marketing. And again, now he's managing RPM Training. So I've had a pleasure of working with you on multiple different facets. And I'm excited to have you here today for this topic.
I'm excited to be here, Amber. It's been great working with you on other projects already too. So it's great.
I know. Well, I guess so. Obviously, the technician shortage. First, we're going to start off really quickly, if you're okay, Murray, with a poll to gauge the audience. So I'm going to launch that. Oops, I was going to launch the wrong one. So we want to understand if you guys currently have apprentice programs in your shops today. We're going to give you guys a few seconds to answer that. I would love everybody to participate because it only feeds the engagement more. What do you think the results are going to be, Murray? I know. Can you see them?
I can see the people posting. It doesn't show the results yet, but oh no, I see them going.
All right. Almost everybody's actually participated. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I'm going to share the results with you guys. So majority do have an apprentice program, which is great. And it's split a little bit between no and I'd like to learn more.
Excellent. Well, I'm actually pleasantly surprised that many people said they do. I think that's absolutely phenomenal because that means people are thinking ahead, planning ahead, and building the future for their shops, for their people, and for the industry. So that's fantastic. The title is Let's Do Something About This instead of just talking about it. I know that obviously people listening to us are doing, quite a few of them are doing, others want to learn other ways of doing it. But I think what I'm referring to in that title is a lot of analysis, paralysis by analysis is probably an expression you guys have all heard, is about why we are where we are. Now, I do understand the need to understand why we are where we are so we don't repeat that again in history. But a lot of it, is complaining about how schools don't have automotive programs in them anymore and how parents, always point their kids to academic studies instead of the trades. Well, that doesn't solve anything, discussing the why. We need to understand the why. We just need to move forward and move on. So that I just want to move something out of the way here, leads us to something called the long game. Those who play the long game will win. I know that a lot of you listening today are really stressed out because you're short staffed, you're busy, you can't get the cars fixed on time, your cash flow is quieter because of that. You've gone back on the tools. I know one fella blew an elbow out a couple of weeks ago, going back on the bench at 57 years of age, and should have, avoided that. So now he's a one-armed bandit. Like I've been teasing him, right? So I know the stresses are urgent, but folks, the human beings that have survived the longest, whether civilizations, individuals, families, and businesses, are the ones that play the long game. So I just want to run a quick scenario by all of you. I personally believe that every shop that in North America that has 3 bays or more should have one apprentice in place. Now, some of you, maybe not in this webinar, but others will say to me, but Murray, right? We're going to get to all the buts about they don't make us money and they always break stuff and, you can't find good apprentices, all that. We're going to talk about that later. But if 5,000 shops took on a third year, right? Now, again, we have audience here from the United States and Canada. Maybe we even have some from Australia and New Zealand. In Canada, we do have a formal apprentice program, a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. But I think most people understand that concept, right? Whatever country you're in. But let's say every 5,000 shops had a third year apprentice, which means that there'll be 5,000 technicians licensed in 1 year. Let's say a different 5,000 shops takes on a second year apprentice. That means we'll have 5,000 more licensed technicians in 2 years. 5,000 shops take on a first year apprentice. That means we'll have 5,000 licensed technicians in 3 years. And 5,000 shops take on a green apprentice, somebody who's never even started yet, and we'll have 5,000 more licensed technicians in 4 years. And then think of the algorithm, which I didn't bother calculating, Amber, because I'm okay at numbers, but not that good. Think about this shop that had this third year get licensed and takes on a first year. Within 4 years, they'll have another one, right? So it just amplifies itself that 20,000 shops could potentially have 50,000 licensed technicians in 4 years, right? Now, one of the objections you will get to me is there's just no humans looking for jobs, regardless of whether they want to be an automotive technician or not. Just the shortage of human beings available to work in North America right now is one of the challenges. But what we need to do is become the industry of choice for a whole segment of people. Now, let's go work on some of the objections. And Amber, you can interrupt me anytime or Moles, just jump in, get my attention, because once I get going, I'm going to roll down the hill. I believe that a well-trained apprentice can make a shop money after 1 month of training, maybe even sooner, depending on the type of business that you are. And by the way, I should have precursored this by saying, in my career, my shops over the years almost always had 1 or 2 apprentices, right? That progressed through that whole program. In fact, 2 of my apprentices back in the day are currently shop owners, and one of them is one of my clients.
Wow.
Shout out to Ryan if he's listening. He started pumping gas for me when he was 15 years old, and now he's a very successful shop owner. So it's pretty awesome. So we need to develop an apprentice into a full-fledged technician by a deliberate process. What I have observed over the years, and I would say there was times where I was part of this, although I did have one journeyman that was really phenomenal with this for about 15 years, is we tend to let the young person, the apprentice, we think they're going to learn by osmosis. We expect them to watch. We expect them to lead the direction. Now, would I like a young person to take ownership of their career? Of course I do, but they're young. They don't know what they don't know. So we have to make it a super deliberate process. We need to create a deliberate plan. And I've got some examples coming up here on how to do that very shortly, to create apprentices so that they're actually making you money within a month. At the end of the day, we want to interview and hire the correct individual for their aptitude, for their attitude, for their, I don't even want to use the word work ethic, because one of the first things that we do to young people when they show up is we hand them a broom. Now, you sweep floors for 6 months, and if you show me that you can sweep floors for 6 months, I might let you touch a car. That may have worked back in the 1950s and 60s when we were all goo-goo-eyed about hot rods and racing cars, and maybe someday I'll touch one. Young people today got no time for that. Now, Would I expect somebody to do their share of pushing a broom around my shop? Of course I would. But I think they should be working on cars within 2 weeks in some capacity or the other, because that's what you've hired them for. That's what you've hired them to develop, right? This idea of internships that you see in movies where the person has to go to Starbucks all day and pay for it out of their own pocket, and struggle because someday they might be that accountant or that lawyer, right? So I recommend that we stop leaving the onus on the apprentice and expecting them to learn by osmosis. We need to lead them, teach them, hold them accountable, test them, encourage them, engage them. And I believe the younger generations, millennial, X, Y, and Z, the good ones of them, because there are lots of good ones. I know us older folks whine about them. That's what they want. They're looking for a career, and they're looking for that. Amber, I should take a breath.
No, you shouldn't. Well, all I was going to say is, when we were preparing for this session, we talked about when you're in school, right? When you were in school and you had an instructor or a professor that has done this, for 40 years, right? They've taught the same topic for 40 years and they're an expert at it, much like you guys are, your technicians, your owners, right? When a new person comes in and they don't know the topic, it's very hard to set yourself back down to almost that, hey, they're learning and we have to be able to put ourselves in their positions, because guess what? Everyone has been in their shoes once before. And if we're not open with our expectations and our communication, how will they know? So that's the other part of this. We have to kind of, we were talking about Technicians for Dummies, or a book like that, right? Like it seems crazy, but you almost have to dumb down what you're asking these people to do. I'm
gonna challenge you on the word dumb down.
I know. Okay. I'm thinking of those books that it's like,
I know,
how to for dummies or whatever. So
cooking
technicians
pasta
are
for
not
dummies.
dummies. That's not where I'm going there, but it's just, setting ourselves back to expectations of like, these are new people walking in the door and we have to be able to communicate our expectations and what we want from them. That's all I meant by that.
And to give them, I'm sorry, Amber, to give them the tools.
No,
it's just, okay. and the reason why I bring that up is a lot of, and you and I have discussed this in the past, a lot of people who are really, really good at automotive repair technicians and that kind of stuff are not always that great with linear learning in school.
Yeah.
And so they automatically feel dumb because of their parents or their teachers and that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm a little bit sensitive, not personally, wasn't challenged with that, but I've worked with people. And I guess I just want to make sure that we do everything in our power to attract as many people as possible. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, well, and and I don't mean that, and dumb is not the right word, because actually technicians are very smart people and they have to have very hands-on engineering almost in a sense.
Yeah. But again, I get that point about those books for dummies. I mean, there's millions of them now. I mean, you can basically find one for everything. How to do YouTube videos for dummies, right? I mean, they're all out there. So I think I know where we're going with that. So, we've talked about owners and head technicians and the main people in a company. They some of them were treated very roughly when they were young apprentices, right? And there's this feeling sometimes of payback, right? I went through a tough time, I got beat, psychologically beat up, so I'm tough today because of that. And they feel like they need to do that to the younger people coming in, and that's not appropriate anymore. To haze people and bully them. I mean, sense of humor and fun and joking around, of course, everybody needs to have a bit of a sense of humor. And we have to stop taking ourselves so seriously. But this idea of I went through this tough stuff and you have to as well, that just has to stop in all levels of our society. But again, owners will talk about, they hire a new apprentice or hire somebody and the person breaks something or doesn't know how to do this and doesn't know how to do that. And they're like, well, that's common sense. That's common sense. You would think they would know that. Anybody that works with me in a coaching capacity, when I coach them, learns very quickly that they're never allowed to say, you would think they would know that.
Yeah.
Because how would you know? And I have to practice the same way with them, right? So I want to work with the idea of what is common sense and what is common knowledge. And there's a difference. I actually have known that there's a difference for a long time, but I actually Googled it a little while ago to actually find out what the difference is. And common sense is something that a human being would pick up by observation that would be common to the majority of people. So the example would be, Amber's kids know that elephants don't drive cars. That's
Maybe.
common sense. Guaranteed they're going to go to a circus and see one, and then I'll be proven wrong, right? But elephants don't drive cars. Airplanes don't fly underwater. I mean, yes, there's a couple of submarines in James Bond that might do that, whatever. That's common sense. That's things that generally in a culture, we understand that. But common knowledge is very different. If you've never actually been shown how to use a broom, you don't know how to sweep. And you would think, well, that person is dumb or stupid. What happens if they grew up in a home with a single parent and the parent was never home and had time to teach the kid how to sweep? Right? It's not a natural thing to learn how to use a broom. I'm just using that one example because shop owners complain about that. So we need to understand, what do they know? What don't they know? Teach them what they need to know, and then encourage them through that process. And the other part of it is teach them the why something needs to be done. And I don't know if he'll be listening today. A good friend, Don, he's, by the way, 4 years and counting for RPM training. I've got a great friend of mine, Don Clausen, is joining me as a part-time coach. So we're actually growing.
That's
so a little
wonderful.
plug for Don. But he was complaining to me years ago when I was coaching him. He successfully sold a shop, by the way. That's why he's available. Went through a succession plan, the whole bit. So I'm pulling him out of retirement. But he was complaining to me one day about a young apprentice that had made a mistake on balancing some wheels. He had asked his technicians to train the young fella to how to balance wheels, which included washing the rims and the tires. And any technicians listening will understand why we do that, because you want to get the mud off of them, because when you balance them, right, if you balance them with the mud on, put them back on the car, you drive away, the mud falls off, now the wheels are out of balance, right? Mm-hmm. So Don walks by and the kid hasn't washed these wheels. And he says, you didn't wash the wheels. And the kid says, well, they look clean enough to me. Right. And then Don's like, right, I gotta go clean those and balance, whatever. But I challenged him and I said, does he understand why he's cleaning the wheels? And he went back and checked with the kid, and the kid didn't know that. The other technicians hadn't taught him that. They just said, wash the wheels and then balance them, taught them how to use the balancer. Right. So that important piece of information, the key reason why you actually wash the wheel, was missing. And now the kid's not yelled at. Don's not that way, but, was kind of called out. Right. Yeah. So everybody, all of us, including me, need to understand the why. I'm meeting with a Zoom rep tomorrow to help me with some Zoom issues.
Well, I can help you with that.
I'm sure you probably could, right? Anyways, so what we're going to do is talk a little bit about using your inspection process to develop an apprentice that can make you money. Right? I'm hoping that all of you have either paper inspections or you have digital inspections. Some of you will have some simple ones, and some of you will have like 150 point, 250 point, complete full bumper to bumper inspection. Well, you can use that as a tool to train apprentices, right? Mm-hmm. Along with everything else that they would be doing. All right. Now, Amber, the good news is I can share pieces of this with you and our audience today. The bad news is this is still all in development by my group members. They're currently working on this together to develop this process for their apprentices. All right. But I'm going to give you guys some ideas to prime the pump, and then, you guys can run with it. So let's start off with week 1, a good general orientation, right? Employee handbook, where are the bathrooms, where is the lunchroom, and meeting all of your coworkers, talking about, vacations and benefits, whatever that whole HR portion is, right? A good orientation for the new employee. Then talk about what is the job of an automotive service technician. What is the job? What is the role? What is the ultimate goal of being a technician, right? Let me give you an example, Amber, of what I teach. Yes, we fix cars, repair cars, maintain cars, but I believe that the role of an automotive service technician is to help people maintain the cost of their transportation, the driving public, right? Bigger philosophical position than just changing brakes or doing oil changes, right? Then we're going to learn respect for the vehicle. You don't lean on clients' vehicles. You don't rest clipboards on the roof of the car. You always use fender covers, right? There's a whole idea of respecting vehicles, respecting the client's vehicle. Cleanliness. What does a clean car look like inside and out? The kid might be a messy kid at home, maybe doesn't keep their bedroom clean, right? They need to learn that these cars are going to leave cleaner than when they come in. The idea of pride of ownership, right? That we want to have pride of what we own and help our clients with that. How do you properly wash and vacuum a vehicle? Has anybody ever taught that person what a clean vehicle looks like without any circles or streaks or whatever? How to safely open and close bay doors. And then there's all the safety training, right? The different kinds of things, using jack stands and the grinders and the welders and all that kind of stuff. Best practices in the shop with keeping, maintaining equipment and using that. Now, the thing that's next is kind of a Canadian thing, WMIS MSDS, but this is the material safety data sheets. I know that you guys have it in the States. I just know that it's a different title than that, but it's all the chemical documentation, the chemical labels, right? All that safety training with there. Shop cleanliness, right? I remember hiring a shop cleanup person, and it was back in 20 minutes. I said, the shop's clean. And I walked around. I said, what about that? And what about that? And they kind of looked at me like totally discouraged.
Yeah.
Because I didn't explain to them what clean to me was, right? Shop organization. Now, how to put vehicles on a lift, on a hoist safely. All styles of lifts, all styles of vehicles. How to handle vehicles, right? With respect, and how to drive that. Radio and seat controls. Amber, my wife we had some friends over last night. She's a high school counselor. And of course, I was definitely jabbing at her to make sure we get people in the trades. But we talked about how many gas jockeys we had working for us over the years. Young people. I mean, 20 some years with a service station, it's got to be 250 young people or more that my wife says that we've parented. Right? Well, we were lucky that gas jockeys could be, our valet drivers. They could help us with other things besides just pump gas, especially when the fuel days were a bit quieter, when the prices were higher. Well, you never touch the radio except to turn it off. You'd have somebody, turn on heavy metal, blasting full blast, leave it on, and then some little blue-haired 80-year-old lady would get in her car and her hair would be straight back out the back window, right?
Yeah.
The seat, where the seats controls are. Shout out to a guy named Chris with a shop. If they have to move the seat, they leave a note on the seat.
That's nice.
In order to service your vehicle, for our technician to gain access, whatever, for safety, for test driving, we've had to move the seat. We've put it back to where we thought it was. If you have any questions or you need some assistance, please come to us. Because I don't know about you, but I get mad when my seat gets moved.
Can't stand it.
I spend hours adjusting it to that exact perfect place, right? Anyways, so if you could see that, how to do a test drive, how to perform an inspection, how to handle parts, cores. Here's a horrible story. New apprentice, eager to keep the shop clean, right? Sees this big chunk of old metal on the floor and puts it in the scrap metal bin. And it gets hauled away the next day, and it had $1,000 core on it because it had never been taught that cores are. Now, do you think that owner got mad and, who knows, maybe even yelled at the kid, right? Yeah. You would think they would know that. Well, how do they know that about cores, right? They don't, right? Scrap handling, how to handle compressed air safely, how to use floor jack, etc. Right? This is week 1. We barely got started.
And,
right?
And you're saying it goes for 2 weeks, right? And then they should be walking through and in a car.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So let's go to the next part, week 2. All right. Now, this is a sample of the inspection that I teach. It starts off with the sort of the visual walk around of a basic maintenance service, what some people call an oil change, right? So there's a lot of basic things that get looked at. So first thing on the list is the windshield and the glass condition. Okay. Talk about how windshields today are part of the structure of the vehicle. We'll talk about what is a good windshield or a bad windshield, chips, cracks, hazing, that kind of stuff, what to look for, what to recommend. Newer vehicles today have the heads-up displays, right? We have that ADAS, driver assisted driver. I forget the acronym for all the safety features of these new cars, right? So who knows how long it would take? Maybe it's going to take 20 minutes or half an hour to teach that young new person about windshields and what we're looking for as part of that process. All right. Now we look at the wiper blades. What is a good one? What is a bad one? Right. Now they can recommend wiper blades. And maybe on that vehicle, if the advisor sells the wiper blades, that apprentice gets to change those wiper blades on week 2 of their job. They're already learning one of the first things touching a car, safely changing wiper blades, right? Can you sell wiper blades all day long? Clients drive in. You talked about you guys are having some rain where you're working right now. Somebody says, "Oh, my, it hasn't rained for 4 months, and now it's raining. My wipers are streaky." They pull up to a shop, and all they want is wipers. Nothing like being able to pull an apprentice off something and come out and can you put some wipers on there? The lowest cost person in the business, and you just made some profit on some wiper blades, right? Windshield nozzles, like the spray nozzles, are they working? Do they work well? Yes or no? Are they aimed? Is the reservoir full? Okay, that means that if everything's is full and they're pushing it and it's still not working, well, now it means that it's electrical testing. Well, guess what? Now it's beyond their pay grade as the expression that we need. So the next stage is they document, right? Filled washer, fluid bottle, nozzle still not spraying. That's all they have to do. Report back to advisor. Advisor then reassigns that to a senior technician who diagnoses the washer pump, and then they make the sale on the washer pump. And maybe, depending on how the schedule of the day is going, that apprentice can be part of that testing process, and that apprentice can be part of replacing that washer pump at that point, right? Because they've watched, they've learned, they've touched the whole process. Then you get into the horn. Does the horn work? Does it not work? Right? Report yes or no. Understanding how most cars have 2 horns, 2 tones, right? And all that whole thing. Into the warning lights. Now, we can change light bulbs. The basic light bulbs that are accessible, easily accessible. I know on cars today, some light bulbs are 3 hours, I've heard. You have to remove bumpers to change turn signals on some cars today. It's crazy. But think about it. If you now have an apprentice who understands how to inspect all the lights, and they begin to learn how to replace bulbs on the ones that are easily accessible, takes a screwdriver, or just, a place to reach in and change the bulbs, they can help you making money. My gas jockeys were all trained to change wiper blades, headlight bulbs, turn signal bulbs, and that kind of stuff. And we made money. They're the lowest cost people in the business, right?
That's the best part of training. I mean, really, right? When somebody walks you through something and they can actually see how you're doing it, the hand, honestly, the time consuming, I'm sure a lot of people are kind of like, I don't have time to do all of these things and walk my apprentices through that. So I'm sure there's a lot of that going on right now, but at the same time, it's the long game that you were talking about, right? So yes, in the short term, it's very hard to do all of these things that to some may feel so simple, that they should know how to do this if they're coming out of schools. And it's such a hard thing, that we're battling, but the time, you can never go back on time.
I know. And I know that everybody's, not everybody, but a lot of people would be objecting to taking the time. But folks, are you going to wait a year again without a technician?
Yeah.
Because within 6 months, this person is going to be doing maintenance services, wipers, lights, air filters, cabin air filters. They're probably going to be doing belts, right? They might even be doing, tire repairs, tire changeovers, tire sales. These are all grady jobs that should have good growth. Well, tire sales themselves don't have that high of a gross profit percentage, but the good gross profit dollars in tires, right? You can make a lot of money selling tires in a short period of time, in an hour of doing that. And just think about it. This person is now doing these things, and you've also got a training on when they stop.
Yeah.
Boss, I've never seen a set of wheels like this before. So can somebody come inspect and tell me how I do this set of wheels, right? But now they've only interrupted. Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Oh, no, I was going to ask a question from the audience. Okay. What's the best way for a shop owner to attract an entry-level tech from a local school? I think we're going to get into that a little bit, but.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, get to know the instructors at the schools. In fact, some of my clients where we had an all group meetup yesterday, and we're talking about that. They get to know the instructors at the school. Some schools allow posting ads, some schools don't. I've heard different things like that. Become a guest speaker. in the classes. Donate old equipment, hopefully not bad equipment, just older equipment, right, that they could use. Donate, I don't know if this still happens, but donate cars. Customer walks away from a car, doesn't want to put an engine in it, pay for the tow to have the car brought there. Work with your suppliers to bring sponsorships in to help pay for parts for the school. Be a guest speaker. And then if you can make the time, this is tougher, is get on the boards.
Yeah.
Become on the advisory boards of the schools, right? Provide paid internships, right? Temporary positions where maybe there's a 2-week break in that student's, depending on how the courses are laid out or how their semesters are laid out, maybe they can do an internship in between or after hours, like after school hours. Like a lot of schools are done by 2:00, right? They can come in till 5 and do that. So these are some of the things I'm hearing shops are being involved in with that part of it. And being a first name basis for those instructors, supporting the instructors, maybe the instructors need some real world
Training.
Exposure every once in a while, and they can come and visit the shop and say, you've got a unique situation here. You want to come and take a look, kind of a thing. So
that's a great thing to offer schools, right? I mean, hey, if you guys want to come for a day, we're happy to show you guys, bring a few students. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, there's been a lot of conversation in my peers and competitors, like the Coalition of Automotive Management Professionals Camp. We've talked about that, and welcome aboard, Amber. It's great to have you on that too.
I'm glad to be there.
We've talked about getting into elementary schools, grade 4 and grade 5 career days, doing shop tours, because children begin to get intrigued by professions already in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, right? Then having middle school kids coming, and then of course the high schools. Some schools have shops, high schools have the shops, some don't. Talking, first name basis with guidance counselors.
I've even heard Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, getting them involved, right?
Exactly. Kids clubs. Exactly. I haven't heard of this often, but I was very proud of a shop that I was a peer with back in my days when I was taking coaching. He actually got a half a dozen guidance counselors from the regional high schools in his market to come tour his shop and to show them the technology and the cleanliness, and these people were blown away. They had no idea. They just thought it was grease monkeys, right? Totally changed their perspective on that part of it. So,
hands-on learning,
right? And generally, the people that we want to attract. Now, we do want technologists, people that are good with computers. Obviously, there's a lot of tech happening, but a lot of people that we need. Their natural learning ability is kinetic, or kinesthetic, I think is called, where they learn by touching, feeling, and experiencing. And so we need to bring that element into the whole process there. Now, a couple of other tips that I can give you. Now, there's a bit of a Canadian slant to this, but obviously just translate into state and federal. Grant money and other tax credits for apprentices that are out there. In Canada, we've been pretty lucky the last few years because of the pandemic. There's been a fair bit of money thrown around for apprenticeship programs. Realize that they are taught in school how to find problems and how to repair cars, right? This is what we're realizing, especially in our Canadian system, is there's some really good schools, and the people are coming out well trained to find problems and to fix cars, which is fine. But they don't seem to be taught how to inspect and maintain cars, right? They will learn, we've got a funny noise coming from the engine. We diagnose it. We find out that it's got a cracked piston, and we take it apart. We rebuild the engine, and it all runs beautifully and smoothly, and that's excellent. But not a lot of time is spent in schools about intervals and how often to change the oil and how that all affects that kind of stuff, right? So making sure that we fill in the gaps that they might not have in the schools. I've talked about elementary, middle schools, career days, high school shop programs, working with guidance counselors, trade schools, vocational colleges, right, where we can get involved there. Investigate, and I could have edited this last night. Sorry, Amber. Provincial and state guidelines for what is taught and required at different levels of apprenticeship. We're, again, super lucky in Canada. And you know what, Amber, I actually know of at least 2 American shop owners that have imported a Canadian apprenticeship program into their shops, even in the States. One guy's in Alaska, and I think one guy's in Minnesota, where they've actually come to Canada, grabbed the provincial stuff, and are using it in there, even though that's not mandated by their state. They're using how our province is mandated, right?
Well, if it works, why not, right? I mean, if
right. So yeah.
Try something different.
I know that we're going to be handing people these slides, and we're going to talk about some other documents that people are going to get. But I'm going to give some samples, and I think the easiest way for somebody to get a hold of this would probably be to reach out to me, because I don't want to just hand out this next thing like candy, just because I want to be respectful of the document. But here's a few screenshots from the province of Ontario Automotive Service Technician Program. So in Ontario, the license is called a 310S, and a truck license is a 310T, right? And they have a whole book. The apprentice has a whole book for the whole process, the safety, chemical handling, the welding, and then every component of the vehicle. So here's an example of electrical systems, starting and charging, general performance objective, right? So then they have a paragraph of what this person is going to learn and need to know, right? Diagnose and repair electrical, starting and charging by performing visual, diagnosing, troubleshooting batteries, servicing, boosting, or charging batteries, etc., right? All the way through. Now think about that. This could be one of the first things that you teach an apprentice. If they know how to do this, your battery sales can now be done by your apprentices. You don't have to pull a technician off if somebody has a battery light on their car when they pull in, right? Now, it breaks down from here. Perform visual inspection, identify systems by this for worn, damaged, corroded, loose, defective components, such as, and then it lists everything. And then guess what happens? The journey person signs, they have their ID number, and the apprentice signs. Tick, that one's done. I mentioned a fella that I had working together with me for 15 years. His name's Earl. He ran these books for the apprentices that he put through. They would come back from their schooling, because every year they would go for 6 weeks of school. They'd come back from the schooling. He would grab their book together with them, and then whatever they had covered in school over the next 6 months, he would ask the advisor, like he would ask our advisor, Kim, next time we have a double overhead cam timing belt, Kim, let me know so that we assign it to Susan, and I can double check Susan's work, and I can fill in Susan's book on that whole thing, right? The aviation industry does it this way, right? Everything is checked and signed off by the examiner, by the instructor. That's what keeps us so safe as passengers in
I was going to
jets,
say, there's
right?
a lot of liability there too. I mean, but there's liability in what we're doing daily, right?
But why not even, the liability is there. I don't live in a life or a world of liability, but I have insurance, and I've signed all my documents. But why not bring in that systematization where, I mean, I'm older now, so the pilots in some of these planes look like they're 17, but there's 25-year-old airline captains now in some of those smaller airlines. Yeah. And they're fine. They're great. I'm totally confident and comfortable flying with them, right? Because they've gone through a rigorous program that has been supervised and signed off, right? Then it breaks into the troubleshooting batteries, and that's now signed off, et cetera, right? So there's a whole book, Amber, that goes through, that takes 4 years to fill out, right?
Yeah.
And imagine the power of that person's ability and skill at that point, if it's done proactively and deliberately. What I've observed historically is the apprentice has to beg for the signatures. The apprentice has to beg for those jobs. The apprentice has to be the one to lead the way. And again, I said earlier, I want to hire apprentices whose head is in the game, whose heart is in the game, they want to be there. But we can't expect them to be leading this process, because they don't know what they don't know. We need to help them and bring them along, right? And we'll create people very quickly.
Well, and how much more, I mean, going through something like that as an owner, how much more comfortable do you feel allowing somebody that's new to your shop walking through, if you've known that you've walked through it with them? So checks and balances. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing with young people is once they get going, they really want to go fast. Right. And so you have to have checks and balances is the perfect word. Susan, you're good on Fords, Chryslers, Chevs, Toyotas, and Hondas. A Jag comes in, call me.
Don't touch it.
Right. Because the batteries are under the seat and da 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 da, and it's it's a whole thing. And that way we protect them, we protect the business, and we protect their confidence.
Right.
I had an apprentice join me, good references, good work ethic, relatively quick for his stage. But one of his weaknesses was after he did maintenance services, after he changed oil on vehicles, he would inspect it for leaks like 7 times. He would lower it down and put the oil in and run it. And then he would lift it up and inspect it and lower it down and do everything else and inspect it. And then he would park it outside and he would get underneath it and inspect it. And I'm like, So I asked him, I said, did you leave the drain plug out of a car and run the engine? He said, yeah. I said, that was pretty psychologically scarring. Yeah. I said, did you get torn to bits by your boss? Yeah. So I discovered that he was overly cautious because of one bad experience, right? So then we worked with it, and right. So
that's why it's so important to give that why, right? Everybody messes up. I'm going to run the poll, but let me say this. But I mean, that's anyone messing up, right? You mess up once, you generally don't do it again. But if they don't know the why, they're going to mess up again, right? So you have to be able to teach them, but that's the best learning point. So let me run this poll. Obviously, a lot of us, you probably are hiring. So what are you currently hiring for? Profitability, skill, attitude, culture. It's a little bit of a different question that we're asking instead of, are you hiring a technician? Are you hiring a service fighters? Or what we really want to understand is what is the process that you put forth when you go out to hire, and what is the main goal that you're hiring for?
Okay. And I also see a really good question in the Q&A, Amber, that I think I need to respond to.
Okay, perfect. You want me to do the poll and then I'll read it to you?
You bet.
And then, so I had a feeling it was going to be skill. So I'm going to give it 2 more seconds. If you haven't responded yet, would love for you guys to engage with us. And while we're doing that, if you have any questions, of course, we want to make this as engaging as possible. So please feel free to submit your thoughts, your questions. And I'm going to run this, and it is what I thought. The majority of people are hiring for skill, attitude, culture, and then profitability. Pretty interesting.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'm going to turn that on its head in a few minutes.
We'll get to do you want to do the question first? So let me read this question, and then we'll kind of go into why we asked that question. So if the Canadian program is 4 years long, what are the wages compared to the US for a technician to complete the program? The average tenure for a US technician is less than 4 years. So thank you for that question. Yeah.
Wow. That average tenure for a US technician is less than 4 years is extremely discouraging. I had no idea. About that part of it. Again, being blessed with our program, we tend to have generally a much, I shouldn't say that. We have had some tenure issues for a different reason. I bet you our numbers aren't that much different now that I think about it. And I'll circle back to why. So it's changed a lot. To the person who asked the question, I know it was anonymous. It's changed a lot over the years, but traditionally in the apprenticeship program in Canada, a starting apprentice would be half the wage of a journey person. All right. So if a journey technician was at $30 an hour, a green apprentice would start at 15. And generally, by the time they got their license, they would be at the 30. Now, that would bug people that were at 30 already, when somebody who just got their license and they've got 30 years experience would get the same amount of money as them. Right. And there's I'm not out of focus. My camera's out of focus for some reason. This is crazy.
We can still hear you. All good.
All right, good. And so that was kind of in the background now. What we're working with in the last few years, and especially currently right now, is just getting a person to come work at the shop. You have to have a good wage. So for example, McDonald's in my area is offering $18 an hour. My son's in the hotel business, and a front desk clerk before gratuities is making just shy of $30 an hour in big hotels. Wow. Right? So you want to attract a good service advisor. We're talking techs, but you want to attract a good service advisor. You're not going to get anybody worth anything for $20 an hour, right? You're going to get a receptionist, right? But back to the technician. So really what we're looking for is, that 20 to 21 an hour, so that person's in that range of, you're competing with other industries and stuff like that. And then the upper end for the licensed technicians, we're now hitting, depending on the region, but we're now hitting over 30 in Eastern Canada, and we're hitting in the 40s now in Western Canada with well-run shops who are profitable, right? Yeah. And that whole idea of somebody gets their license after 4 years, doesn't get the 40, right? They'll probably get the 32, 33, and then after 5 years, they'll hit they'll get that 40 range. So that older style has sort of faded away because it was just an old way of doing it, right? So I don't know if that helps that person, but basically, the successful shops, let me put it this way, have constantly revisited their technicians' wages, have been raising them for the last 15 years. They haven't had a problem as much as maybe some of the industry has had. And I've heard some of the numbers out of the States and how low wages are. And we can tell why we have that low tenure, because owners not knowing how to be profitable are underpaying people, and the people don't stay, and then they move on. Here's the other key thing that I think maybe our tenures might be as low as the United States as well. And it happens that second year. A lot of people will do first year, they'll do second year, and they'll get a job at new car dealerships or big franchises, great big chain stores, right? The big 10, 12 big chain stores. And they'll be doing oil changes all day, maybe the odd brake job. And they hit the second year and they're like, I'm not learning anything, I'm not growing, and they leave. But they don't leave the dealership and go somewhere else. They literally leave the industry. So we were losing like a quarter of our apprentices already 10 years ago because of those bad practices, right?
Yeah.
Of certain sectors. Go ahead.
And I mean, of course, money speaks for itself, but also letting the techs know that there is room to grow, right? Why would somebody stay if they don't feel like they can grow, if they don't feel like they can make more money? So that's also something that has to be, here's the expectations, here's, where you can go, and benefits, right? I don't think a lot of shops are offering benefits outside of, the pay, but that's another good way.
So two things that I wanted to reference, I've been thinking about talking about even to you the other day when we were prepping for this, is one of my peers, another coach in the United States, was at a big conference recently and found out that there was shop owners that didn't have paid vacation for their technicians. Now in Canada, that's a mandatory federal thing. Like you automatically start with 2 weeks after your first year and 3 weeks after your third year, and then whatever, right? Something like that. So to me, it was a bit of a shocker that it's a choice in some states, but obviously it is, right? So I'm thinking to myself, right away, no paid vacation. Like, what in the world? Why would I work for somebody that doesn't offer that, right? And then Cecil from We the Institute, who I think is coming up next month with you on our webinar, has a great proposal. I asked him if it would be okay if I gave a shout out to this idea that he's got. He wants to work with the industry and have all the shops that he works with raise their labor rate by, I think he's talking about $20 an hour.
So yeah,
automatically give $10 an hour to the technicians, automatically give $5 an hour to benefits, like in that there's a calculation on doing that, and then automatically donate $5 to a fund to provide scholarships for apprentices to get into our industry and internships, right?
Or that $5 could go to continued education for the technicians. I mean, right? I mean, it could be a slew of things, but continue. I mean, there's so many ways to get education in this industry. I think that's great. He did mention that. We have some questions coming in, so I want to. So I'm going to hit this one first. Although there are a lot of valid points being covered, I believe one of the biggest questions to ask is, how do we as an industry treat our technicians with respect and decency? And it is rarely about money. You nailed it. You nailed it.
Nailed it.
I think, and Peter, we should be friends.
Yeah. Peter, I referenced it a little bit before, that hazing of young technicians, right? We would, I can't remember all the stuff that people would do, but, and to the point of bullying and stuff like that, and to toughen them up and that kind of thing. So that's one part. Here's the other really big part that I believe has been a foundational challenge for decades, is a shop owner who's on the front counter is so desperate to make money and profitable, they allow the driving public to walk all over them. They're afraid to charge properly for what they do, so they end up discounting and they end up not being profitable, and then they lay that on the backs of the technicians, right? Technician identifies that this vehicle needs 2 ball joints. It's a safety concern, right? And the service advisor / owner on the front counter waffles on that and says, well, you can do one of the ball joints. It's the worst one. The other one can wait 2 weeks. And that technician's like, really, dude? Seriously? You're just questioning my judgment call as a technician, right? And so what's happened is because the front counter, whether owner or advisor, don't have the emotional fortitude, the intestinal fortitude to present that information and document the decision, those technicians are getting very discouraged in the back. That's very disrespectful to discount what their decision was when they made it in the back. And I said something very key here. The technician makes the judgment call. We present it to the client and we document the decision. We don't force anybody to buy anything. If the client declines those ball joints, we fill out that the client declined it. We have them initial or sign that work order, and we've protected the technician. And even though the sale wasn't made, the technician can still feel good that they did their job, right?
Yeah.
And it's management's problem to figure out the rest. So
yeah, I love that. I mean, it's such a culture is such a pivotal factor of retaining employees, all of that, and making sure that our technicians feel that we trust their decisions, and empowered to do so. So
we need 4 hours on this one, Peter, but we're going to move on.
I know we have 9 minutes left. So let me just reiterate, we are recording this. I did get something that just came through. So don't worry, everybody will get a copy of this. I do want to say one more thing. There was one more question due to the lack of out of
work techs.
Out of work techs, or so it seems. How do you go about coercing one from another shop? Somebody's currently looking for a tech.
So I can answer this really, really quickly. Nothing against Indeed, but don't use your money on Indeed. I've got a bunch of other social media marketers that will back me on that. Use social media, use LinkedIn, have a LinkedIn profile and a LinkedIn company profile, really important. Use those places to market for positions, and then use marketing. Wages, benefits, that kind of stuff, anybody can post all of that. You have to choose pain points of what people are going through. So here's 3 common pain points today of the very few technicians that have moved, but they have moved. They're tired of their commute. So talk about their commute in your ad. They've done a real estate deal where they've sold a home and bought a different home, and now they hate their new commute. That's 2 common things that I'm seeing. Not common, it's not in the dozens, but a few. And then at larger locations like dealerships and the large, big franchises and stuff like that, the supervision, shop foreman, supervisors have changed, and now the person doesn't like their new supervisor, right? And people don't like change. We as human beings are afraid. Think of the first day of school, what that feels like. Now you've moved to a new town and you're going to school for the first time. You're terrified as a kid. Am I going to have friends? Hey, 35-year-old technician has still got the same fears. I talk about them, but they're still there, right? So we have to give talking points about the things like that would bring people across, and talk about your culture and some of the fun things that your company does. And here's the other really big one, is talk about quality. Are you tired of working with people that don't care about quality? Because we sure do. Talk about how strict you are. Talk about your standards. Talk about how hard-nosed you are about quality. And you're going to find technicians that are looking for accountability and quality, and looking for shops that are like that. So, all right, I'm going to move on, Amber, to our sort of closing slides.
Thumbs up, so that's great.
In this case, we've got people desperately looking for a tech today. But I'm going to say, either under a sense of urgency or a sense of planning, make a business case for the new position and for the cost. Do your numbers actually indicate that you need a technician? Because if you have 4 technicians and you're only billing out half of their time, you don't need another technician. You need to bill out your current technician's time, right? So you're going to need to understand your key KPIs, efficiency, productivity, and sold hours per technician per day, and make a business case for it. First, number 1. Number 2, create the position and the pay, regardless of a person or a personality. All right. So I have a position I'm creating for a lead technician or a lube technician or whatever the case may be. And I'm going to give you some guidelines on how to create the position and determine what that pay of that position is. Then you advertise to the position, right? You interview to the position. If the applicants coming in don't meet that position, they're not qualified applicants. The interview is over very quickly, right? Don't waste a lot of time. And then hire to the position and have a good onboarding process.
That's huge.
That's huge,
That's
right?
epic.
None of this, your toolbox goes there, here's your first job.
Yeah.
No. Meet the team. Here's the toolbox. Here's the bathrooms. Here's the equipment. A whole day on the human resources, employment contracts, on the employee handbooks and stuff like that. And then on the systems and the processes. We have digital inspections. Let me walk you through a digital inspection process. A week later, you do a check-in and you supervise another digital inspection to see if they've got it, right? Put them in a position to win.
Yeah.
Now,
I heard something the other day that goes with that. Mood sets action, right? So how you bring somebody in is going to set how they act in their daily jobs, right? And it all starts from you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's a hard realization that you forget that it starts from you.
Yeah. All right. So let's spend a couple of minutes on positional agreements, we're going to be handing these out to you. Amber and I will figure this whole thing out. But the whole idea is when you're creating a position, what is the result that you're looking for, right? From that position, things like efficiency, productivity, different things like that, right? What are the outcomes that we're looking for? Broader business objectives that would be achieved by the position, that person contributing to that. What are the aptitudes required? Both the natural ability to do something that is suitable for that particular position, right? So you might need a mechanical aptitude to be a technician. What are the duties? This is the job description, right? What are the duties performed by that? And this looks after that, formerly known as job description. And then what are the skills? And Amber, I remembered why S. I used S to fit my acronym skills. But these are right. These are the required education, training, certification, credentials, experience, qualification for the position. One example would be a driver's license would fall under this category, right? Believe it or not, that would be a good question to ask anybody that you employ, because I have somebody interviewed a service advisor that didn't have one, and that didn't end well. Right? So on that note, we have this resource available on one for technician and one for service advisor that Amber and she'll help me make those available to you guys.
So I'm going to leave the floor open really quick for any more questions. Mike said, great job. You Canadians are putting our US training to shame. We need to learn from you. Well, you're more than welcome to reach out to Murray. He's happy to help you. And any of you guys that joined, if you need tips on growing your apprentice program, making tweaks to it, starting one, this is what this resource is here for you guys to do. So as mentioned, we will send this recording. We will send kind of all the notes that we talked about in the documents Murray had just mentioned, but we really appreciate it. I know that this is an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing issue, but slow down and think about why you're hiring and what you're hiring for, and make sure that when you hire people, to put in processes in place that are going to make them successful, so that it's a long-term game and not just a short-term game. And I think, over time, we will see that change and get involved in your industry and in local areas, with schools. If you have kids, maybe host a birthday party. I don't know, don't do that, but it's a good idea. 5-year-old birthday party at a repair shop. No, but there's many ways to get involved. But we appreciate you guys being here. If you have any questions, we're always available. Murray, it's always a pleasure to work with you.
Yes. Thank you, Amber.
I appreciate it. And again, there is a survey that will pop up after this, but it'll also be given in the replay once you get that email. And we look forward to see you guys on the next webinar. So thank you, Murray. I appreciate your time. I don't think we have any more questions. All right, guys. Chat to you soon. Bye.